So our plan was to get set up at 9, give you guys some time to get to the sheets. Kind of waiting out there. I think they're going to move the table outside so that folks can now get them and come in without causing any disruption on here. So I will give this presentation first here to you guys. A few things to mention. So as I talked about before, we have a link that is up, that is available to you. If you email, the top of your option sheet has that West Palm Beach Century Village email address. If you send that to us, we can send you the link. The video that I recorded yesterday is walking you through the option sheet, which is the main part of today. In addition to that video that walks you through the link, today's presentation, I'm going to go into some of the insurance market issues that are going on, so it's a little more in depth, and then I'm going to walk you through the sheet, and this is being recorded as well. So if anyone here is just, hey, I got to get out of here, I can't stay, or you have friends that want to see this, or other board members that want to see it, you have numerous options to provide them. You will have a copy of the video, you will have a copy of that link that goes over just the option sheet. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible for everybody this year to get the message out. Also, after this is done, we will stay here, our team, to help with any questions. Plus, we are at the UCO office today from 12 to 3. We are also at the UCO office tomorrow and the UCO office on Friday. So you will have our team to ask questions to, and I will go over the exact times of that at the end. But there are multiple ways to get questions to us. Or you can always just email that address too that's on the top there with any question you have, we'll make sure you get an answer. Okay? So real quick, I'll introduce myself and my team, and then I'm going to kind of get into the insurance market issues, and then we'll walk through that sheet together. Okay? And then any questions you will have afterwards, I'll be here to answer them. You can ask me, I'll answer them on the microphone, but I want to get through the presentation first before we do that, so in case anybody does want to leave or needs to go. So real quick, myself, my name is Philip Massey. I'm with Assured Partners. We became the agent on the Century Village program last year. So this was our first year going through it. So last year's renewal was a little bit of a, we did the best you could do, but you don't have a lot of the data from the prior years. You're figuring out how this process works. This year should be much cleaner of a process. Of course, the insurance market's a lot worse, which we'll talk about. But the actual ability to put together option sheets that show prior data and all the info you probably are going to want are in these new and improved option sheets. So they're going to be much better and clearer than you probably had in the past. We've also been able to clean the program. We're in control of it. We know that there shouldn't really be any errors. There might have been a few last year which we worked to correct. That shouldn't be the case this year, or at least not to the same degree, because the information is now ours versus having to get it from somebody else. So quick introduction, Phil Massey, Assured Partners. I specialize in community association insurance. I've been doing this for 17 and a half years, 11 years at a company called Brown & Brown, the last 6 years at a company called Assured Partners. My team insures about little over 1,200 condo associations around the state of Florida. We do, probably another 300 or 400 of the larger HOAs. It's just myself as the agent and my partner, a lady named Nagar Sharifi, it's been around this association before, but the two of us are the agents. We have a team of 20 folks in our office that service this book of business. It's a very large community association book of business. 4 of those individuals are here today helping us, and if you've been around with us for the last year or so, you recognize them. So Jenica Mandarano is the main account executive. Jenica is the one who runs the office and this program and does it very well. You have Christy Lawrence. Christy is the one you probably recognize the most because she's walked every inch of this property. She's our claims coordinator. She was out here the year right before the renewal last year. She walked the property with a guy named Fred Sebastian and Tony Gohan, who came in from Ohio and did those loss control reports on every one of the associations. So Christy was in charge of that. Christy also does all the claims intake. So anytime you have a slip and fall or a property loss or anything like that, directors and officers, Christy's the funnel for that. And we've cleaned up that claims process significantly since we took over the account. If you look at the year-over-year claims numbers, they're stark. So they've gotten much better, which is going to help all of you because it helps our overall program and its marketability. Then we have Jessica Hilliard. Jess has been with our team for the last several years. I've known her for like 20 years. She was a property manager for condo associations for many years, and 20, even though she don't look it. She's been doing it a long time, and she is on our team and helped last year and is helping this year as well. And then Elma Palm. Elma's been with us several years too. Accounting background, helps Jenica with the program and helps with our team, and is also bilingual as well. So that's the folks that are here to help, and then obviously myself. For me, again, specialize in community associations. We talked about how many we insure. I have my CIRMS designation, which stands for Community Insurance Risk Management Specialist. And that's our highest designation an insurance agent can get to specialize in community associations. Heavily involved at CAI. I'm on the Florida Surfside Task Force. I'm involved politically in trying to get better legislation passed for community associations, which we kind of half succeeded on this year. I can get into that in a whole different conversation, but there's some stuff we didn't like that was passed. But we're very involved in all of that. So lobby on your behalf, and do all that stuff too. So kind of live and breathe this. I sit on, well, last year at this time I sat on 4 large condo boards. I'm president of 2 at the current moment. So as you guys are board members, I'm doing the same thing, making a lot of these same decisions for the communities that I are involved in the units that I own. Okay, I also, one other thing to mention, I teach CEU classes for the CAM license, so the Community Association Manager license in Florida. I have 8 courses that I've personally created myself and I teach. I do these a lot now, post-COVID. We do them via Zoom, a webinar. And I know Donald, who I just saw, he's here and puts these classes on in this room sometimes, or the Yugo room. So you might have seen me doing some of these classes, like condo water damage, the new bill requirements for 3-story or higher condos and what they need to do with phase 1 inspections. Slip and fall deal, all that stuff. So we have 8 courses. If you are ever interested, we record these courses. So you can't watch a recording and get credits for the license, but a lot of you guys are licensed managers. You just may want that information to watch or to send to your ownership, especially like the condo water damage ones and stuff. We're happy to send those links to you. So that is something we do and provide. So just let us know if that is something you all need. All right, so let's get into this. So the big difference between the presentation I'm giving today and what you're seeing if you watch the link that we've got is that I wanted to get into a little overview of the insurance market and why things are so bad, okay? So it shouldn't be a surprise to any of you. Now granted, I get it, there's folks that may not live in Florida full time, maybe down and not hearing the news or seeing stuff that's going on. But the state of Florida has a very bad property insurance issue at the current moment. And just by a show of hands, you don't have to raise if you don't want to, is that a surprise to anybody? Because I kind of feel like most people know this by now. They see their homeowners rates going up. They've seen the increases we've been taking on this program since 2017. So we went 10 years here in the state of Florida without a landfalling hurricane. 2017, everything, hard break, stopped, right? You had Irma, Harvey, and Maria. Really bad storms. Impacted the Gulf Coast. Florida, obviously, with Irma was a big deal. That's where the market went from. Anybody here that remembers 2005 and 6, the rates were through the roof back then. That was after Katrina and Wilma and Ike and Francis and Gene, and I don't know how many damn storms hit us that year. But that was the peak. And then 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it just kept getting better. So the rates kept going down, and they started to flatten around that 2016 because we were really cheap. I mean, if you look at what insurance should have cost, it probably went below where it really needed to. And we kind of bottomed out there in 2017. Then Irma hit, Harvey, Maria, and then the whole world. If you look at the last 6 years, what we've been through, 5 of those 6 years are like the top 10 worst hurricane years on record. I listed them out, so I'll forget when I'm even going through to list what we have here. Irma, Maria, Harvey, that was 17. Michael was 18 in the Panhandle. Florence, Laura, Ida, and Ian all hit since 2017. Every one of those was a major hurricane. So we got hit with, 6 major hurricanes in 5 years in the Gulf Coast, which is, again, unprecedented. Ian was a problem because what ended up happening in Florida is that we were having a pretty good year this year. We had August has never been that quiet, and this was a year where we were supposed to have a lot of storms, and we really needed this to be a clean year because the biggest problem out there is capacity, wind insurance, the ability to get wind insurance in Florida. And so if we would have had a clean year, it would have helped the capacity in the market. But Ian was the exact opposite of what we needed. I say that it's like trying to put out a house fire with a flamethrower. It was brutal because what ended up happening, Ian will likely end up going down as the 2nd or 3rd most expensive hurricane on record ever. Okay, so Katrina's number 1, and then you'll comes in at 2 or 3, depends on how the final claims come out. But we're talking about anywhere between $40 and $65 billion of insured losses, and that's bad in any year. But when that happens in a year like this, it's especially damaging, because when we go into 2023, there's such a crunch on capacity right now, so the reinsurers don't want to give insurance to the insurance carriers, that what we really needed was the limits that were out there to be able to be carried forward to the next year. That can't happen now because all those claims are stuck. No one knows what they're going to end up paying for Ian, so they can't pull the money forward. They got to keep the money in 2022 to be able to pay those claims, and it kills us in 23 because we really needed that money to have some sort of a normalization of the market. The rates were always going to go up, and our projections pre-Ian were 15 to 30%, what we put out to all of our 1,000+ condos that we insure. We did that back in August, so that was obviously prior to Ian hitting. We do that budget email every year. If anyone here wants a copy of that and you email us, we will provide you that copy. We will add you to our email list. We try to be very transparent so our boards can properly budget. Ian, game changer, right? So changed everything. So we sent out an Ian update budget, which a lot of you in this room I'm sure got, but that Ian update budget then moved that number from 25 to 50%. That's basically what we were looking at in the overall insurance market as being the overall premium increase. That did not include the appraisal value increases, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So that's pretty stark, right? I mean, 15 to 30 is already bad. Now 25 to 50, and there's so many horror stories out there. I've got communities up multiples of themselves, so 100%, 200%. Got one the other day, 127 to 627. How do you do that? Because there's just, and that was a unique scenario, but that's the kind of stuff that's going on out there with how bad this market is. So that post-Ian budget, we put it out there, try to prepare people as much as possible. But still, I mean, going into this renewal, it was really tight. The Century Village program is dependent on really one carrier, which is American Coastal Insurance Company. And thankfully, they decided to renew the program. Had they decided to not renew the program, I mean, the numbers you see in front of you would be, again, multiples of themselves. That's how bad it would be, because it would be so difficult to get the wind coverage. So we got what we needed, it was a tough renewal process. And so the increased storm activity is reason number one, right? That's the reason that the rates are going up. And that's always going to happen. It happened in 2004 and 5. If the carriers get killed and they lose money, the reinsurers lose money, they increase rates to make up for it. That's basic insurance. That happens all the time. The problem that is making Florida worse and have these issues probably worse than they should be is the claim litigation issues. So it should be a surprise to no one that the state of Florida is a litigious state, right? We have a lot of attorneys and there's a lot of litigation that goes on. The issue when it comes to property claims is that we've had an absolutely abnormal situation here. So if you look at our state versus the rest of the country, and these are stats that you've probably heard in the news or looked at, our state represents, out of the 50 states in the United States, about 8% of the property insurance claims nationwide. Yet our state represents about 80% of the claims litigation nationwide. If you look at the next closest state, the numbers are stark. I mean, California's got more population. You would think potentially it's more litigious. We blow them out of the water. I mean, like thousands % higher in claims litigation. So Florida has some weird laws that are very, that are not carrier friendly, if you will, that have been abused by the folks that are involved in that community. Now, I think, and I will tell you, the first one to tell you, insurance carriers are to blame too. So I'm not sitting here trying to defend them that they've done everything right. Clearly have done things wrong over these years that has allowed the scenario to be the way it is. But the litigation numbers can't be denied. You have situations where the carrier gets sued, they settle the claim for $50,000 to you guys, to the board, and the attorney involved, due to fee multipliers, ends up with $300,000. So if you look at some of the figures, the attorney fee multipliers, the one-way attorney fee laws, these are things that are unique in Florida and get abused that end up leading to more payout. So I'm going to give you a stat. I don't even believe this. This is incredible when I read it, how crazy this is. So in the last 10 years, the insurance carriers in Florida have paid out $51 billion. So in 10 years, $51 billion with a B, in Florida property carriers, property losses in 10 years. Only 8% of that number ended up with claimants, which is you guys. 71% went to attorney fees and public adjusters. So you want to follow the money and how this stuff goes. You kind of figure this stuff out. And so there's also folks that say, well, the insurance carriers are making money hand over fist and they're screwing us and we're getting. What I would tell you is, if you look at the last 5 years, we just had several major insurance carriers go insolvent. We had 6 of them last year, so there's been 8 in the last, whatever it is, 18 months. And I can list out all these carriers. If the carriers were making money, they wouldn't be going out of business. You don't go bankrupt when you're making money, right? Now, it doesn't mean the insurance carriers didn't make stupid decisions and do dumb things that led them to that position, but I can tell you that the litigation is what makes this unsustainable. Because there's always going to be hurricanes in Florida. We dangle out in the Caribbean. We live here. I've been here my whole life. I grew up in South Florida, grew up here in Palm Beach, went to high school here. I've lived through many hurricanes, starting with Andrew, and I can tell you that that's always going to happen. But the litigation, you can't have both of these things being worse than any other state. That's how you get an unsustainable insurance market, right? So we're right now 3 times the average homeowner's price in Florida versus the average national. That number will only grow unless they do something about it. So in May of this year, the governor called a special session on insurance. You might have seen that in the news. So we had a special session in May. They made some changes to the laws focused on the attorney piece and the claims litigation. It wasn't very aggressive, but they did something. The problem is it takes time for that stuff to work. We don't have time. The market continued to degrade, Ian hit, so they called another special session. So 2 in 1 year on insurance. The next one starts Monday, so next week, the week of December 12th. We will be involved in that too. That is going to have to pass more aggressive litigation, or I'm sorry, I can't even say it, aggressive legislation, because if it doesn't, the insurance carriers are going to look at Florida as, again, it's unsustainable. They can't lose money every year, 6 years in a row, and then be like, listen, our investors still want to do this, right? I mean, eventually the investors back out, you can't get investment in. So we're going to see what happens next week. If they pass legislation that helps Florida get on par more with the rest of the country from that standpoint, that will help stabilize things. I can't promise it's going to be rate decreases. 2023 is going to be awful. The good thing for you guys is you're on the front end of that. It's going to get much worse. If this renewal was in April or May, it would be much worse than it is. So we're getting it done on January 1st. Everyone has to survive 2023. It's going to be awful. But once we get over 23, God willing, no hurricanes hit in 2023 or it's a low year, plus we start seeing some of those laws to help that claim litigation, I believe 2024 the market will start to stabilize, flatten out, and then we will have folks re-enter. And I've already heard conversations from people that see the writing on the wall. There's money to be made here in Florida, but the problem is they can't get the reinsurance to be able to offer it. So we need that to free up a little bit. So that's coming, okay? So the combined impact of those 2 things, the storms and the litigation, is what's creating some of these issues. The other thing that I will mention, because it's kind of the gorilla in the room, is inflation. So inflation is happening. We're all part of that right now, what's going on. But it impacts insurance pretty acutely. So for example, if you have a roof that the insurance carrier underwritten before Ian hit, and they assume that roof's going to cost 50 grand to replace it, well, inflation has caused that roof to no longer be 50,000 bucks. I mean, some of these roofs, especially after the storms, they're multiples of what it was before. So now the insurance claim cost that the carriers are paying is much higher than they modeled or predicted for. So that's kind of number 1. Number 2 with inflation is what you're seeing on your appraisal increases. So every 3 years or 36 months in the state of Florida, you're required as a condo, 718 statute requires this, to update your insurable values with an updated insurance appraisal. Yugo, 2019 was the last one, had an update here in 2022 for all of you. That appraisal increase has gone up between 6 and 27% depending on the association. So everybody's kind of all over the board a little bit on that. 6% is nothing. That's not bad at all for 3 years. 27, that's more than we would have historically expected, but that is not abnormal in this current market. So, but that impacts you, because if your appraisal values go up by 10%, your premium's up by 10%. That's not even including rate increase. So it's kind of a double whammy, right? So that's the other thing that's hitting the market. So I will say, just before you get to the option sheet, the power of the program you're in, for the participating associations that are involved in our Century Village program, I can categorically tell you, we can show you the map and the behind the scenes if you need it. I've reviewed associations that are not participating in this program, and compared them side by side to ones that are right next door, I have communities outside of this association and what they're having. I can tell you the premiums, despite the increases that you've seen, are much less than what they would be outside of the protection of the program, and the deductibles are much lower, the ones that are available. Now that is structurally changing as we go forward here, as the market's changing, which we'll get into. But the 2022 program, if you compare last year to the non-participating or other association, it's significantly less expensive. I can go through a list and show them to you, but when I say significantly, 25, 50%, I mean less, for the ones that are participating versus the ones that aren't. And the coverages we're able to negotiate in the program are usually better and broader, right, than what you're getting on your own. And that makes sense if you think about it. If you're sitting out there as a 1970s built community with 10, 15-year-old roofs, and you're just floating out there on your own, it's much, you get wiped out when the market goes bad. When you're in this program, we've got $700 million of values that we're negotiating on. That makes this program get everyone's attention. I mean, you think me and 5 people from my team, we go to every board meeting, you know, we stay here for 3 days, we do that. That's because of the program. So being in the program gets your attention from a small association that probably would not get nearly as much attention to getting full attention because of the protection of the Centrability program. So I think it's very good what's being done. I do believe we need to protect this program long term. You can see how fragile it is this year. If American Coastal was not willing to renew, or they went out of business, which is obviously possible, there's significant issues going on in the market, that would kind of be catastrophic to the program. It would be very difficult to overcome that. And so we're always looking to the future. What can you guys do on your associations to make this program better? So some things I'll throw out at you kind of real quick. You know, roof updates is probably the number one thing. Y'all can't make your buildings newer, right? You were built in 1970, you can't make your building in 2002 construction, 2022 construction. You can't, right? You're always going to be a 50-year-old building or 40-year-old building. But what you can do is not have a 1997 roof, right? You can have a 2022 roof. That roof, that new roof, absolutely helps for the overall marketability of the program. So you will see on your program, if you compare the community next door, and they've got a 17-year-old roof, and you have a 5-year-old roof, there's a significant difference in rate. The people with the older roof are paying much higher rates than the ones that have the newer roofs. So it's trying to promote positive behavior to make those roof changes. Right now, the cutoff is 15 years. So if you're 15 years or newer, you're not getting dinged. If you were out there on your own in the market, you would be getting dinged, because the market now is basically 10 years or even 7.5. It's crazy how they're rating these roofs. But our program, 15 years or newer. If you're 15 to 20, 16 to 20, you're getting dinged in one. Basically, the rate increase is there. If you're 20 or older, it's another rate increase on top of that. So the older these roofs are, the worse that's going to be. But that's only fair, right? I mean, the majority of the associations have replaced their roofs. They spent the money to do that. They should enjoy better rates because of it. And so that is something that we've made sure there's stratification on. Same thing when it comes to property claims and liability claims, which we'll get into. But new roofs really helps. The other thing is the loss control reports. So last year with Christy's team and what everyone did here was give everybody these loss control reports. Those reports are just good things to look over and see what are the issues our loss control people saw when they came to review the associations. If you can work on making some of those repairs, fix some of the trip hazards, work on some of those items, it's good to do. I do encourage you with the electrical situation. There are the old Federal Pacific boxes that about 30% of these associations have. That is something that the easy way to do it is just have a certified electrician, someone who's licensed, come and do a review of the program if you want to get your own vendor to look at it, and do what they recommend you do. Because these older boxes, this is something that if the program was ever, if the carriers ever wanted to make it an issue, they could. Because a lot of times we can't get carriers to write people with the old Federal Pacific panels at all. And so we know that stuff exists here. So it's something to work on to make the overall program better. And then the last thing I'll mention is the phase 1 inspections. Anybody here, and you can show me, raise a hand if you want, but there are about, I think, 19 associations that are 3 stories or taller here. So most of you guys are 2 stories, which I can't tell you how good that is. 2 stories, killing it. I own in 2-story condos. Because of the law changes, 2-story condos are going to be valued more than 3-story and above. 3 stories are getting kind of screwed, right? So they're only 3 stories, but they're getting lumped in with all of this BS that's come down from Surfside. So what happens for 3 stories and taller, they need to get a phase 1 structural integrity, they need to get a phase 1 structural inspection. We have a vendor that we've partnered with that will be there to help the 19 associations that are here if you want to use them. We will provide emails on that and information, but that's something you're going to have to do by the beginning of 2025. That inspection will be a visual inspection at first, but it's very important that you do that. If you don't do that, my expectation is that the insurance carrier is going to not renew the insurance if they don't have a copy of that. That's going to become a requirement for the 3 stories and above. So it's something to think about. There's also something called the Structural Integrity Reserve Study. I hate that. Bad legislation. I'll say it on the camera. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. I've railed against it. You've seen my videos on it. I'm hoping that legislation changes in March next year when they go into session. So I wouldn't get too crazy about that one yet, but that is something to keep on your radar with your management companies. Again, only for 3 stories and above. Okay, so then I mentioned already the way the program's designed with rates. So what is changing year over year? So we'll get into the option sheets now. So everyone, I think everyone should have in front of them the copy of their option sheet. Again, if I go too fast here or you want questions, I share this exact sheet on the webinar and walk through it step by step. So if I go too fast and there's other questions, you can watch that back. So if we look at this sheet, I'm going to kind of just walk through it and I'll talk about anything that's different and then kind of wrap it up for you guys at the end. So the very top of the sheet, you're going to see a few important items. Option sheets are due by December 19th of this month. That's Monday. We're giving you the end of business on the 19th. The reason we need those back, and last year was the same exact date, right? It was our due date. We need some time to work these. We don't know what options everybody is going to pick. So nothing here is 100% in stone until the program gets finalized. So for example, if last year 30% of you bought option 2 instead of option 3, like we're running on those predictions, but if more people buy it than expected from the year before, or less people buy it, it can change things. So we need to make sure we've got time with everything that we need. So it has to be turned in by the 19th. The earlier you can turn it in, the better. Okay, so it lets us go ahead and start working on it. But the absolute latest is the 19th. If you do not submit an option sheet by the 19th, you will automatically be selected option 2. Okay, so option 2 is the automatic selection if you do not turn it in, and we will also finance the premium. That is the same thing that happened last year. Option 2 was the automatic selection and finance. So if you do not turn it in, that's the option you're going to get. It's kind of the middle road, split the baby option, right? So you want to make sure you get your options marked by the 19th. If not, they go into the automatic option. Other thing to mention here that's not noted on this sheet, this is only for the participating associations. So if you're currently in the Century Village program, this sheet is for you. If you are not in the Century Village program and you want to try to opt in or become a member, we need to talk separately because it's not as easy as it was in prior years with us just throwing a quote out. We can get close, but we can't quote the property. Our master program carrier will not allow anybody new into the program on the property side. So we need to talk about that, all right? So if you're not participating, we can have the conversation. For everybody else, which is probably 98% of this room, it should be a participating association. If you're not participating, it'll say that in red on here, so it'll be obvious that you have that. So you hear that about the option sheet. So on the top of this sheet, it goes over some specs of the community. This is important. So the top left is going to be the name of your association. Please make sure that the association name matches your association, obviously, right? You don't want you looking at somebody else's. Moving to the right, you'll see the number of units. So the one that I have in front of me is 24 units. Your association may have less or more. That number should be accurate, obviously. That is what we're basing your directors and officers, your general liability, and your umbrella premiums on, those number of units. So we want to make sure that that's accurate. The property manager is on the top right. That property manager should be accurate as well. So as of now, this one's Seacrest. I know they do a bunch in here. But if you're changing management companies or the information on you is incorrect, you have to let us know. We do not know if you change management companies. We don't get an alert, okay? So you have to let us know that because we need to bill them for the program, okay? So make sure we know who your management company is. Prior term option sheet chosen. This is a new thing. So these are new and improved sheets this year to make your life easier. This will show you what option you picked, option 1, 2, or 3, and it'll show you whether you finance the premium or you paid in full. Because those are the only 2 decisions you need to make. You just need to make which option you want to go with, and if you want to finance and pay in full. So if you want to do the same exact thing you did last year, that's right there for you, okay? It's showing you what you picked last year. To the right of that is the prior term premium. That's the premium that you were billed last year. And what's really important to note here, if you have last year's option sheet with you, or you're looking at it, this number that we show on the new option sheet is probably less than that number. Because when we came last year, same exact time we're coming here, we don't know the final numbers yet. So we build in cushion. So last year, this particular association I'm looking at, their option sheet showed $19,246. The final number billed was $18,763. So it came in 2.5% less than we had projected it would. I feel the same thing will happen this year. So your final number should be less than the number we're showing, but we're trying to be conservatively high, so we're not screwing you guys up and coming in more than we expect. All right, so just understand that as well. So the number on the top right is what you were billed. If your option sheet shows higher, that doesn't mean anything. It's what you billed, okay? The roof year, big thing here. Roof year on this one says 2003, so this is a 19-year-old roof is the example I'm having up here. That roof year should match your roof year. Remember, if it's older than 15 years old, you're getting dinged, right, on the roof. So if you've replaced it and it's not accurate, let us know. Our team has a spreadsheet on this. We do a great job of checking to make sure that the permit websites are updated and we're asking those questions. Mike Bunk does a great job tracking that stuff. But it's still your responsibility to let us know. We try to catch what we can, but clearly there's a lot of associations and a lot of roofs, so keep that in mind. Make sure your roof info is accurate. When it says mid-year, that means wind mitigation year. So what that means is when you get a new roof, you should get a wind mitigation report on that new roof. Most of you will have a roof year that's older than the mid-year. So the mid-year should either match the roof year or be after the roof year. There is some of you that might show a mid-year that's less than the roof year. As long as the roof year is right, you're not getting hurt from a rate perspective, but you would want to get an updated mid sheet or make sure we have the most updated mid sheet from you, because it just helps to have that stuff on file, especially when we market the account. And then the prior claims, that's going to be a big thing. So this particular association has no claims that we're showing here, but there is potential that you have property claims, general liability claims, or directors and officers claims at your community. So if you see on this top right that it says property yes, or PROP yes, or general liability or liability yes, or directors and officers yes, and you may have all three, then that means you're getting dinged in the rate for the loss experience, okay? What you have to remember is it doesn't mean any loss gets you dinged. So for example, in the general liability program, we take all the premium you've paid the last 5 years, and you have to have losses that are above 40% of that premium number. So if you had a slip and fall that opened and closed with no payment, or something that paid $1,000 or something like that, you are not getting dinged, okay? The only way you get dinged is if you have significant loss experience. So general liability loss experience above that 40%. Same thing on the property side. When we have property claims here, $200,000. If you have significant property claims, you're getting dinged as well. Outside of that, little stuff that happens is not hurting, okay? And even for those of you that are getting dinged with claims, the rates you're paying inside this program are still significantly less than you would pay out on your own, because those claims would hurt you much more if it was just your association sitting. So keep that in mind. So again, that's only fair, right? This program is built that the associations that had no claims and the newer roofs are going to get the best rates. I mean, the ones that haven't are not. It's just the way it is, how the program is kind of built to be fair for everybody that's in. Now, the options, you get to the middle piece of this page, shows option 1, option 2, and option 3. So this is really the biggest change year over year. Last year, the American Coastal Insurance Company that wrote the property insurance, let me back up a second. The only changes in the program this year are in the property. All the other lines of coverage are identical. Okay, so the general liability, crime, D&O, umbrella, and work comp did not change at all. So they're identical to last year. The property is with the same carrier, but as the market's hardened, some coverages are not as great, which we're going to mention, but it's still fundamentally the same. I mean, 90% of the program is identical, but there are some differences. And again, it's all in the property, so let me focus on those. The hurricane quote last year, the hurricane deductible last year, was a 3% deductible. And we had options for you guys to buy it down to 2% or buy it down to 1%. That is no longer available because the main quote came in at a 5% deductible.
So the option was to buy it down to 4% or buy it down to 3%, okay? So the same options as last year, but instead of 3-2-1, it's 5-4-3, okay? I will say, if your association has the funds and wants to buy the deductible down further, we can do that on an individual basis, but I assumed based on the increases and everything else, this was the way it made the most sense to illustrate this. But if somebody does have that desire, they can let us know afterwards. So if you look at this, we've got options 5%, 4%, 3%. Fundamentally, it's the same thing that was last year. The main quote was at 3, you had a buy down of 1% to go to 2, or a buy down of 2% to go to 1. Same thing happening in the way this is structured. As you go down a little further, another big change is going to be the limit of insurance. So you'll see on here, the limit of insurance for this one was $2,009,000. That is the limit that we're insuring your property for. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here just to show you where we're getting that from. If you go to the top of page 2, which is the second page, you'll see on the top right, that's what your 2022 value was. So for this association, it was $1.8 million. It increased this year to 2.09, which is an increase of 9%, okay? So that's very important for this program. Due to those updated appraisals I mentioned in the summer of this year, these values have increased anywhere from a low of about 6% to a high of 27%. So that is factoring in here. And so when you see that limit of insurance, that's 100% matching the updated appraisal. We are not making these numbers up. We are not changing these numbers. We are complying 100% with 718 statute, and we're insuring you 100% of the value of your insurable replacement cost as of the report done by Paul Cassidy with all appraisals this summer. Okay, so this is a very accurate figure for you guys. As you go down from there, the deductible for anything that's not hurricane related is $10,000. That used to be 5. So that's gone from 5 to 10. Again, that is expected. That's what we see in the market right now. That's what we projected would happen. As you go down from there, everything else is identical. So the general liability insurance with their deductible, the crime limit, the D&O, the umbrella, all that's identical. The only thing that might be different between associations when you look at this, based on association size, the crime limit might be slightly different, and then the directors and officers deductible. If you have D&O claims, and it says D&O claim on the top right, it could make your D&O premium higher, but it also can increase the D&O deductible. So you may see a deductible difference there than your neighbor, but that's the only difference. The coverages are the same. And then we get down to the premium changes. So if you go down to the bottom, you'll see the premiums for each one of the options. So in this one that I'm looking at right here, their option 3, which is the main quote, the total premium was $23,852. The expiring, again on the top, was $18,763. So the difference in dollars is $5,000 and $5,088, or 27%. So this association, if they went with option 3, would be a 27% increase over what they were paying before. If they go to option 2, that number jumps to a 36% increase. If they go to option 1, it jumps to a 52%. So you can see we've got the dollar amount there in the middle and the percentage difference to make it really easy for you guys to look at what it is year over year. Be careful here that you have to factor in that appraisal we talked about. So if you look back at that option 3 I just mentioned, this is a 27% increase. Over 11% of that increase is just from the appraisal value. So the overall rate increase for this particular association that I'm looking at is only about 16 or 15% when you do the math. And I say only, I totally understand that 15% is high in any world, I get that. So I'm not trying to downplay that. But in this market, where we were looking at 25 to 50 for rate, not counting appraisal, that's a really good renewal, especially for buildings of this age, located where we are post-Eden, okay? Again, that doesn't mean you have to be happy about it, but it's really solid, because we were projecting that to be much worse. Now, there are clearly associations here that are going to show bigger jumps, right? I mean, you're going to have bigger appraisal increases, or you're going to have claim issues and stuff, but this is just an example of one that had an older roof, so this wasn't a new roof, but it didn't have any claim issues, and that was their increase for those options. As you go below that, you're going to have a payment option. You can either pay in full, or you can finance it. So last year, the finance option was a 12 equal installment, which is the best, the lowest down payment, equal across the board, and it had about a 3% interest rate. This year, we're showing a 5% interest rate. Again, we don't put anything on our side on this. We zero out the bank on it. But the damn interest rate hikes that keep happening are raising this for everybody. This is something we cannot control. So again though, if you were out on your own and you look at what the non-conforming participating associations are paying, their interest rates are typically a lot higher than this. For an association of your size, from about 25 grand in premium, you're probably paying 8-9% interest rate. We are able to get that down significantly through the program, but we don't have that final figure yet. So it's going to be somewhere in the high 4s, maybe low 5s, but that's what we noted on there. So 12 equal installments, or you can pay them full. You have to choose that along with which option you want to go. It's literally the only two things you have to choose, okay? Then below that, board member prints their name, signs their name, dates it, and it would be really nice if you could put your email address in here. Because what we will do is we can actually send you a confirmed copy of this via email so that you have it as proof of what it was, so you can look back on it historically. And then we also have your email address, which we can use to provide you these budget figures and things that are going on. So right now, it's tough communicating with everybody if we don't have that info, so it's good to have that on. If we go to page 2, again, the most important thing was what I mentioned up top with the appraisal difference. And so that appraisal difference absolutely it's a double whammy this year, right? If there was no appraisal increase, this is a 15% increase. If with the appraisal, it's 25, right? So in years like this where the rates are hardening and you're getting an updated appraisal with inflation, it's going to be that kind of double jump. It's happening to everybody right now, including the places I sit on the board for. So that is something that is occurring. As you go down from there, another big positive of this program is true replacement cost. There's no depreciated value in our program. So you get full replacement cost regardless of the specs of the building. That is very unique in this market. Again, if you were a standalone association, you're probably not getting it. Cause of loss special form, that's the broadest cause of loss form. It goes basic, broad, special, so special is the best. Co-insurance, that is a change year over year. It was agreed to value, it was going to 100%. That was fully expected, it was put in the projection email. That is something ACIC is doing across the board. The benefit though, or the thing to counteract that, is we upgraded the values, or updated the values to match the appraisal that was just done like 3 months ago. Okay, so we have accurate values we're using, but there was no option to go away from that 100%. The fungus, wet rot, dry rot, mold, the supplements that are in here, 50,000, that's the same. Ordinance and law on part B and C decreased from 10% per building to 2.5%, but the rest of these things are basically identical. ACIC had a RAP program they put in this last year that added some additional limits on the fees. That's gone this year, so they're not renewing that with London. But that was something that wasn't super material, but that's not there either. But other than that, program's identical. And as you go down the rest of these coverages, the program is identical on all those lines. There were no negative changes on the general liability, the crime, the D&O, the umbrella, or the work comp. The bottom, not to make this small print, so I will read this to you because it's very important. This is the same thing as last year. What we're showing you is a projection. We have these quotes, but the quotes will absolutely, potentially, I say absolutely, potentially, I can't say. They're going to change, right? You're going to have the percentage deductibles based on who buys them. The things will change a little. The hope is that the numbers we're showing you are not going to go up. If anything, they're going to come down, okay? So your final premium will probably be less than what we're showing you this sheet, but we can't guarantee that, okay? So last year we came in about 2.5 or 3% less than what we said on there, but I just want to make sure I'm very clear on that for everyone listening. We can't guarantee that until we have all the option sheets in on the 19th and all of this is finally run, okay? I will tell you, if it ends up being more, it's minimal. It can't possibly be significant. So the numbers you're looking at are going to be very close to what they end up being, whether it's a little higher or a little lower. The hope is that it's going to end up being low. So we've built in as much cushion as we can. But things like the umbrella renewal don't even have that. Those carriers are not releasing that early. And the big issue we have with this year is 2023, your renewal is the first renewal of that year. It's 1/1, January 1 of 23. In insurance worlds, all the programs get negotiated for changes in 2023. So it became very difficult in hard markets to get quotes released early. And I can tell you the fact that we even have this property quote this early is very unique. Most of my associations right now, we would love to present the renewal a month early, but we can't. We're doing it the week of, 2 weeks before, because we can't get those property renewals, especially for January. And you'll see why that's happening too. I mean, they don't even know what commissions they're paying them. I mean, they don't know anything. They're changing their whole setups and how they're doing things. So we are working around that to be able to deliver this to you with plenty of time to look at it, so we're not here last minute, which would be a kind of disaster. All right, so to recap real quick, going through that, I just want to make sure I leave you guys with a few things. So the due date, again, the 19th, make sure we have it by then. You can email it or you can drop it off at UCO. If you don't respond, you get that middle option and it's financed. Again, that's identical to last year. So the due date and this is identical. The premium reminder I just mentioned will be different than what this sheet says, likely will be less, okay, than what the sheet says. But it's not going to be that exact number, so don't take that to the bank. The billing for this, Jenica, do you want to, the management companies will bill it. Do you want to just, in case I'm missing anything on how that process goes, in case you don't get it?
Yeah, all the invoices go to the management companies unless you are a self-managed association. So that will come, it will come after the first of the year likely because everything has to be finalized. But I deal with all the property managers directly for that. And we'll set up all the finance contracts and everything for those being financed with the property managers as well, from that standpoint. So it's kind of a well-oiled machine on the payments on the back end, but it does take a little bit. I know some people last year wanted to write the check right away. Don't write the check yet until we send the invoices.
And it won't jeopardize coverage, so we're good in coverage. So you're not going to not get covered if you don't pay by the first of the year. It just has to process, okay? So it just takes some time. Again, there's 300 of you. It's not like there's 2 associations you're processing, and there's different management companies, and you have to get all that stuff together, which can be a lot. So again, we will be here after this to chat if needed. There is we'll be at UCO today from 12 to 3 in the office there if needed. Tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be there 9 to 12. And Friday, Jess and Elmo from 12 to 3 will be here. You can always email us if you need. 2 more quick things I just want to add. If you're a non-participating association, definitely come talk to us. And sorry, the very last thing, just to mention real quick, I want to make sure everybody understands you're not being held captive by this either. So if anyone here is
We're in a better position because we were at 1% last year.
absolutely can do
So
that.
the lowest we can go now is 3%, which is what you want. So you're actually the only one showing the exact increase. Because right now, he's comparing it 3% to a 1%, which is incredible.
You always have.
So this comparison.
Any questions or anything else, let me know. I thank you guys very much for your
That's
time.
what you have. So you're.
Okay, thank you.
I was worried about it. I got some people in my field that can't afford.
I'm very happy to have you. But I'm saying, Alan, and you can see the comment.
Guys, just let me know, our team is back there too, so if you have a question, you can ask any of us. Just one quick,
I've explained that to my guys, and they don't understand this, but they don't like this. You know, we're gonna have to, because I just said it.
We're fortunate that we've been keeping up.
I'm gonna, secrets are the ones that told me the budget at 35%, and that's exactly what we're now about. But we're at 3%.
Right.